like the clicker thing. So again, my name is Rick Heiges. I'm a consultant with Microsoft in the data and AI space. And I was a data platform MVP for over 10 years and very involved with PASS, on the board of directors for 9 years, and had the spearhead something called the 24 Hours of PASS program, which basically twice a year we'd have 24-hour webcasts in a row. And basically, so we went around the world with people broadcasting from all over the world about SQL Server and data stuff. So that's kind of the big thing there. And I got some certifications recently, and we'll talk more about that. But I'm just kind of curious, why would you want to certify? Why would you get certified? Anybody?
Validation.
Validation? Okay.
Show you're current.
So you're current?
So
Good.
you're capable of doing the work, or some work.
Cool.
Process itself actually helps you learn.
Process, yeah, helps you learn, exactly.
And required a lot of times too, right? That be an option.
Can be required for a job role, right? Exactly.
Or, I know a lot of times when we're responding like RFPs for different opportunities, you have to have X amount of certifications.
Or if you work for a partner, you have to have you may have to have so many people have a certain certification in order to be a certain status in a particular, like gold status or silver status or whatever. Yeah, yeah. So, and that's, that's why I actually go out after certifications, is basically I want to learn more new things. And at Microsoft, it is required for my role to have one of the new certifications by September or something like that. It's one of the things they say, oh, we need you to get certified. Matter of fact, at Microsoft, they just announced a couple months ago, if you're in a technical role, even if you're a technical manager, if you're not really technical but you manage technical people, you have to get a certification. So they are really focused on this. And there's a certain certification called the Azure Fundamentals certification, which our managers are getting. It's very basic. I'll talk more about that. But they want to make it so that so much % of Microsoft employees are certified in Azure. That's one of the reasons why they're doing this. But also, the other thing is, they had a study I was reading about 2 years ago where they said candidates who gained a certification that they were going after got a raise, or 23% of them got a raise within 6 months or something to that effect. So it isn't, if maybe some of you are as old as me, and you remember that the NT4 MCSE certification, right? If you got that, you could get a job like that, right?
Right.
So certifications are not that way anymore, at least not the Microsoft ones. It is, I kind of look at them as, hey, you have an interest in this area, you've proven that you've done a certain amount of study, and you've accomplished a certain skill level in order to learn or to execute in that area. So I don't look at it as mastery, like the NT4 certification was supposed to do way back when. And we all saw these boot camps.
Boot camps, yeah.
Right?
Killed it.
Right? You learn for 5 days, you take the test on Friday, and you got your paper MCSE, right? And the testing questions have changed a lot since that time. So I'm going to talk more about questions as well on the certification test that we see today. So the other question we get about the new certifications are, well, why are they doing this? And if you look at the new certifications, you'll see that they are more role-based than product-based. So if you go to the Microsoft site right now and you look at all of the different data certifications, actually I have a slide with this on it, you'll see that the older certifications that start with 70- whatever, they are mainly product-focused. They're saying, oh, you're going to prove that you know HD Insight, or R, or Python, or Power BI, or something to that effect. It's all about being product-focused. These new ones are role-based. The role-based certifications are saying, hey, if I'm going to be an AI engineer, what type of things do I need to know about in order to be successful at that? Same thing for a data scientist. Anybody in here into data science? A little bit? Yeah, no. I took the test. It was hard. I'll tell you about the test I took as well. I'll give you some feedback on things that I saw. But you had to know some data science concepts, and that's just how you did it in Azure, but the actual saying, how does the data fit into this model? So it was more rigorous than I've seen in the past from that point of view. Also, the certifications are designed to expire in 2 to 3 years, so you have to keep current. Going after another certification if you want to remain certified. Also, all the new certifications are cloud focused. Yes, on Azure, because that's what Microsoft is, right? And if you have any questions that deal with on-prem technology, are always in the scenario of a hybrid type of approach to computing. Like, for example, I have SQL Server on-prem, and I want to access that data or present it through Power BI. And what do I need to do to make that happen? And so it's that type of scenario. So if you are in an area where you are pretty much on-prem only, and you don't do much with Azure, these certifications are going to be a stretch because they're very much cloud focused. Excuse me. The other thing that I like to think about this for these new certifications are show me versus tell me. And I think about 4 or 5 years ago, Microsoft launched this new thing called the Microsoft Professional Program. And it was offered through courses through EDX. And basically the courses were free, but if you wanted to get a certificate for that course, it cost you $100 per course type of thing. I can get a data science course in a particular language or whatever. And at the end of the course, you did a capstone project. And so you were able to show somebody that you were able to take what you learned and apply to that particular aspect of what you're studying. So they said, we need to involve more of that into certification. And I'll tell you more about what we're seeing there as well when we go forward on here. The other thing that, reason why I have new certifications is they're consistently changing question base because there's always something new in Azure. What I tell people is say, well, if you don't like what you see in Azure today, don't worry, tomorrow it might be there.
Like Charles Weller. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, I think, if I remember correctly, I think in 2017, I don't have this stats for 18, but in 2017, in Azure, there were over 700 new features or new offerings available just in 2017 alone. So that's about 2 a day. Think about that, 2 new things a day in Azure. So that's why these are going to be constantly changing, okay? New offerings, new features, new approaches. For example, if I was going to ask somebody, hey, I'm thinking about using containers, what should I use? Anybody?
Kubernetes.
Exactly, right? A few years ago, if I would have asked that question,
They would have probably said Docker.
yeah. So things change as well. And sometimes, like I said, Kubernetes, right? That is a kind of a standard that's kind of emerged over the past few years because of all the stuff you can do with it. So there can be new features, new approaches, or things that just are not valid anymore. So they're constantly changing. I took a test, well, I had to take the test several times over a year ago, the 70-535 exam, which is the Architecting Solutions in the Azure exam, because I kept on just missing the passing grade. So I had to take it 3 times. And one of the things I noticed was there would always be, I'd only see maybe like 10 questions that were the same across these 3 retakes. And I was like, man, they've changed all this stuff. But also they would have like new features that were being introduced in beta that were being being asked on the exams as well. So sometimes they do that just to do testing questions, like to test out the questions, see if they're a good question or not. So sometimes they do that in these exams as well. So what we're going to talk about are, again, the new Microsoft certs, especially the data-related certs, learning paths, resources, some test-taking tips, and we're going to touch on the AWS and GCP certs. So just so you can get a kind of a taste of what those look like. I'm just kind of curious, anyone take an AWS certification exam in here? Or GCP? Okay. I have some friends who, I haven't either. I have some friends who have, and they tell me that the resources available to study for those certs are not as robust as the Microsoft certs, and that means that the tests are usually harder because you can't prepare for them as well. So this is what the new certifications look like. There's 4 main tracks, if you will, right? We have apps and infrastructure, data and AI, modern workplace, and business apps. So we're going to not talk about anything on the right-hand side of this because I haven't even looked at that stuff because I don't deal with that world. I deal in the data and AI space and also some apps and infrastructure space because those two are very closely related because lots of times we have things where we say, hey, I need a SQL Server on a VM, and that means I need to have infrastructure available in order for me to make that happen. So let's talk about apps and infrastructure first. This is, a year ago, none of these certifications existed. Okay, this is all brand new, basically. And actually, the fundamentals exam didn't come out until January of this year. So they have what we call different levels. We have fundamentals level, we have associate level certifications, and expert level certifications. Right now there is no expert one in the data and AI space. So the one that closely maps to that would be the architect solution architect one. And underneath or around these boxes are the names of the exams that you would need to pass in order to obtain that particular level of certification. So fundamentals is not required, okay? And I have some friends who've taken the exam. They say it's pretty easy.
It's not required to get to the next step.
No.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I got the architect solution architect expert level certification before I got these ones and the associate level ones, just because of the way that the exams were coming out. So you don't have to go in order. You can do whichever ones that make sense to you. So for many of the certifications, you just need to have one test, and you have the certification. Okay, so that's pretty good. For the architect solution architect, you need 2. For the data engineer, Azure Data Engineer one, you need 2. So, but most other ones are just 1.
Are you going to be able to post this?
Yeah. Yep. So the Azure Fundamentals one, the cost of this test is $99, so it's cheaper than the usual test, which is $165. There are deals out there. You can purchase an exam with like 2 additional retakes, so you can go take it and have confidence that if you mess up or if you don't have time to study for everything, you can take the test and just see if you pass or just learn what you need to study. So that's a very valid approach. But for Azure Fundamentals, it talks about cloud concepts, core services from Azure, security, privacy, compliance, and trust, and a little bit on pricing and support. It doesn't go into detail about, well, if I run a VM with 2 cores and 8 gigs of RAM for 24 hours, how much? No, don't ask questions like that. It's more about the generic pricing of things. So I had I've had some friends who have taken this exam. I have not taken this one. And they said they were in and out of the test center in 15, 20 minutes. They're very familiar with Azure. There's some managers here at Microsoft who have had to take this test. And they're not technical like us, but they needed to be, to a certain level, they needed to be technical, and they prepared for it. It did take them longer, but they were able to pass. So this is definitely something that you can achieve, I think, without a whole lot of effort. So, yes, sir.
I presume it's not the case with the fundamentals class, but with the other classes, with the rate of change of the underlying technology, how do the study materials stay current? And will you be talking about that further in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good question. We'll get to that eventually. Remember I talked about, hey, show me versus tell me. So Microsoft is introducing in their certification testing what we call performance-based testing to show your skills and not just answer questions about it. And now none of the tests that I have taken have had a performance-based testing aspect to it, but I know people who have, especially, with the Azure, I think the administrator exams where they saw this. Basically, they would give you a browser window and a subscription that's already been pre-populated with stuff, and they go, okay, your task is, I don't know, you have 2 VNets and you have to peer them. So you can do that through a GUI, you can do that with Cloud Shell or PowerShell, whatever way that you can do that, you just show that you do that, and you get the credit for it. Because there's so many ways to do things, right? It's not just one way. It could be 3 or 4 different ways to do it. So they're saying, hey, show us that you know how to do it, instead of just answering questions about it. So that's another thing that they're getting into with the testing. So here are the data exams, if you look at them currently, and you'll see that a bunch of them are now saying retires June of this year. And so whenever, last year, whenever they announced, hey, we got these new certifications coming out, I was like, damn, I just got a couple of these, and they're going to be expired. So I was like, I'm going to get, as soon as the betas come out, I'm going to get on it. By the way, this is beta up here for these data exams with the yellow little flag on them. They're now live. They went live in the last 3 weeks. So these are all new. Yes, sir.
Are the ones that are retiring usually evolving into a different one? Is that one what happens? Or is it just that
Kind of, but remember, you were product focused, and now you're role based. Probably the one that closely aligns to something like a transformation is this 70-774 one, which is Cloud Data Science with Azure Machine Learning. That would be like designing and implementing a data science solution, DP100. So there's a lot of material overlap from that, but it's not a straight, hey, you study for this one, it's going to go to that one. Because they've kind of split up some of the things that they were doing in 70-74 into various tests and the new role-based certifications. So, learning paths. So this is a question that you had, basically saying, hey, what if, if things change, how do I know what to study? So I think I have it up here on the browser. Yep. So I can go into roles. And right now I have developer checked. I can uncheck that and say I want to look at Solution Architect. And then that will bring up a different pathway for me to follow. And this will change as the exam changes, as the requirements of the exam changes. Now, in each one of these, let's say this first one, scale multiple Azure SQL databases with SQL Elastic Pools. The estimate to do this module, it take you 39 minutes. Basically, it's reading. And also, often in these modules, they have exercises for you to do. And often after every like 2 or 3 units, they'll have like 2 or 3 questions as a knowledge check. It's like a no pressure knowledge check because if you get it wrong, you just re-answer the question and take another stab at it, right? So it's kind of low pressure stuff. So this is one way of looking at going after to learn these items here. Also, if you go to Microsoft.com/hands-on-labs, there are individual labs that also map to roles. So that means you don't need to have an Azure subscription, but not all the stuff is covered there in the labs. But you can basically go through the lab, get like 2 hours of time to complete that lab, and then that lab goes away. So you have to kind of, if you want to use hands-on labs, you have to say, okay, I'm going to, from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I'm going to do this. And just, be in that mindset. No one bother me or to get that done. So.
If you don't focus on your URL, you
Hands-on labs.
If you don't finish, you can go back and do it again, or? is
Yeah,
that
you can do it as many times as you want.
And these are all
The
free.
labs,
They're free. Yep. Yes, sir.
might be asking this ignorant question, but when I'm taking certifications more on the networking side, but for the Microsoft, are you going to a testing center when you're actually ready to take the test?
Okay, that's a good question. So are you going to a testing center when you take these certifications? I do, because my desk is so messy, it would take me longer to clean my desk than it would for me to go to a testing center and take it. So you can take these tests at home or your office, but basically what you do is you have to clean off your area, and then before you start the test, you have your webcam on and you like circle, show them that
That's great.
any cheat sheets or anything like that.
Smart.
So I have not done that because I know
You're off.
I will not, I will not have my place clean enough for that.
People
But-
put their cheat notes on the camera itself.
And also, actually, I was doing a podcast today on this subject, and another one of the folks on the podcast said that he did that once, and they have you close down all your other programs, right? But you had a background task that ran, and it popped up during his test, and so they stopped his test and they said, "We see something running that shouldn't be running. We think you're cheating." So, he says he will never do a home-based test again. I don't know. So, for me, I go to testing centers. And we'll talk more about testing centers in a little bit as well. We go back to this. Okay, so basically, so fundamentals is optional. But for any one of these associate level exams for data is what you need to go for there. And then expert, they advise you, if you want an expert level certification today and you're data focused, just go for the Azure Solutions Architect Expert. Now, they haven't officially announced this, and I don't have any inside information on it. But they also said there's more roles to come here in this level, in this associate level space. But I don't know when that will happen or if it will happen. This is just something that said, yeah, we're going to put more roles out here too. So we'll see. So if you are looking at the AI Engineer Associate exam, basically, I'll read the description here for you. Azure AI engineers use cognitive services machine learning and knowledge mining to architect and implement Microsoft AI solutions involving natural language processing, speech, computer vision, bots, and agents. So if that sounds neat, and you want to learn about that stuff, AI engineer is for you. Only one exam. Only one.
5 hours.
Well, you only have a total of, 2.5 hours to take an exam?
Jeez.
So,
Jeez.
for the data scientist associate, data scientists apply Azure's machine learning techniques to train, evaluate, and deploy models that solve business problems. So, if that sounds neat to you, take statistics. Because there's a lot of data science terminology which derives from statistics on this exam. At least that was my experience. And then the data engineer one. Data engineers design and implement the management, monitoring security and privacy of data using the full stack of Azure data services to satisfy business needs. So, if you are, this is what I try to tell people. So, if you're a SQL Server guy today, you go, which one of these 3 certifications for data make the most sense to me? The answer is this one. But there's still a lot to learn because it's not really about SQL Server. It's about Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Data Warehouse, Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, HD Insight, Databricks, a bunch of other stuff that is not on-prem. So if you're an on-prem guy, you're going to have to learn to fly in the clouds to get these certs. Simple as that. Practice exams. They have added a few more. I just checked yesterday. I didn't get a chance to update the slide. But all the practice exams are for the Azure certifications, the Azure Administrator ones, the Developer, the DevOps, the Solutions Architect exam, the Fundamentals exam even. There's practice exams out there for them. So that is where they come from. I like taking the practice test because it gives you a kind of a feeling of, what to expect. I think you can learn a lot when you take a practice exam if you take the right approach. A lot of people, when they take a practice exam, they say, "Oh, I got that right," or "I got that wrong." Or it's answer C all the time, whatever, right? That's not a good thing to do. So what I like to do is when I take a practice exam, and I get my answers, and I look back at them, I go, why is that wrong? And then usually on the practice exams, they have an explanation about each answer and why it was not correct, or maybe it needs to be in conjunction with another question or another answer in order to be correct. Or maybe there's a better answer or because there's one little requirement, you need to choose B instead of C. So I have questions about questions. Okay, so number one thing is answer every question. Because if you don't answer the question, it will be wrong. Okay? If you answer incorrectly, doesn't count against you as negative points. Okay? So you answer every question. I know like on some college board exams, if you answer a question in such a wrong way that they deduct points for you. Right?
You're an idiot.
Yeah. They don't do that. So you can answer every question on the exam. And I've seen this sometimes where it says, choose 3 out of the following 6 things in order to satisfy the requirements. I'm going, I think I need 4. And do I mark 4? No. because it told me 3. So when it tells you mark 3 things, then you choose 3 things. Okay, so keep that in mind. So the question types, there's multiple choice questions, which I don't think I need to explain to everybody. There are pick 2 of the following that satisfy the requirements, which is kind of what I just said. You know, there's 6 possible things there, and I have to pick 3 of them or 2 of them for the solution. Drag and drop. I hate these because there's like 7 things on the left-hand side.
Put them in the right order. Your OSI
Yes,
thing.
you drag them to the right-hand side, and they have to be in the right order, right, in order to satisfy the requirements. But they do tell you to say there's 3 things to pull over or 4 things to pull over. So at least they give you that number, right? So it isn't like, well, am I just doing like 1 and done, or do I need to choose more? So drag and drop. They also have complete the code with drop-down list choices. They have a code segment, and there'll be an empty space there, and a little drop-down list of choices for what that you should put in there. So that's kind of like multiple choice, in a way. Usually you have, but it's not just one thing in a piece of code, it's usually like 2 or 3 things. And you have to choose, well, choosing this here, does that mean I don't choose it here? As it can be intimidating. Then I call this other type of question, which I remember when I first encountered it, I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I call them single shot questions. So what happens is they'll give you a scenario, and they'll say, here's a scenario, and here's a solution. Does this solution fit the scenario? And it's yes it does, or no it doesn't. Okay? So you answer, you go on to the next question, you can't go back. And by the way, the next question is the exact same scenario, but with a different solution. It will ask you, does this solution meet the requirements of that scenario? And so if you're not ready for that, then you have to think, wait a minute, I can't go back, and I think that one was the better one than this one. So you have to be prepared for that type of question. And I hate those. And then they have the case studies. And we'll talk more about case studies in a minute. But within a case study, you have like, say, 5 to 7 questions in the case study. And once you get through that case study, you can't go back to the case study. It's its own little section, if you will. And on one of the tests, I forget which one, they put some single shot questions in the case study. So it's like, once you answer that one question for the case study, I can't go back to it. I was like, that was really infuriating for me. So let's talk about retake policy. You have to wait at least 24 hours before you do a second try at the test. Okay? And after your second try, if you need to take it again, you have to wait at least 2 weeks. And you can retake an exam or have a total of 5 attempts at an exam within a 12-month period. So it isn't like, I'll just take it again. I'll take it again. I'll take it until I get it right. No, you have to, there's some timing involved with this as well. Home-based testing versus test center. We talked a little bit about that already. I say go to the test center.
Are these at like Starbucks? Where's the test centers? You're obviously in the know. I mean, I assume there's test centers within Microsoft. Whereas if we don't work for Microsoft, we don't have ready access.
So when you go to register for the test, you can choose different test centers. And
Here's a bunch.
there is a bunch. And it can make a difference because the testing center that I usually go to is a small little ECPI area with like 4 testing carrels in there. And it's never crowded. I don't have to worry about other tests that they're administering. Like I went to this one test center in Greensboro, and they were like giving like drug tests as well, and some other type of tests that I was like, what the heck are these people here testing for? So it may make sense to look at that list of test centers and pick a few out, and maybe go visit the test center ahead of time. Say, just get the logistics jitters out of your head. Kind of understand. Maybe talk to the people, saying, "Hey, is there a time of day that things are less busy? Or when do you see a rush of people? Because sometimes whenever you go to a test center, a lot of people coming in at the same time, it can take a while to get you started, and you start getting anxious. Am I going to have enough time to finish this test? So it's one of those things where I say, go to if you feel better about that, go to the test center ahead of time and get the lay of the land.
Do you get a lot of concerns about that with the way a lot of, I guess, the new students have high anxiety levels, or? That's my nice way of putting it.
Well, I mean,
Students have taken tests more frequently than you.
I'm saying the younger people need like their safe zones and they need more comfort and environment in order to take the test.
The millennials is what you're saying?
I wasn't going to say that. I don't think there are any.
Do they get participation awards?
so the test center I go to, I'm usually the only one taking a test.
I do have actually a concern along that line. If you go into the center and it is uncomfortable and you're not obligated to take the test right then and there, you can come back later and take it. I would think.
They need to look at the policy on that, because you may lose your registration fee.
Like, if somebody were to be wearing too much perfume, I would not be able to take the test. That's my concern.
I don't know about that. You'd have to look at the FAQs on the testing, and maybe even send an email to somebody.
It's actually a valid thing for me.
Yeah, of course. And I think they've made accommodations now. I think it could even vary by test center, but I went to this one test center, and they're like, "Well, if you need a bio break, just raise your hand, and we'll come over and we'll just make sure that you don't take anything with you. You can go to the bathroom, and then you come back, and you can keep going on your test. But of course, your clock is still running during that time. So it used to be that you weren't allowed to do that. You were not allowed to go to the bathroom during your exam. You had so much time because they felt if you left the room, you're going to be cheating. I think there were some other concerns there that people said, wait a minute, I have this medical condition. I have to go to the bathroom, whatever. So anyway, so my experience with the data engineering exams, this is the order I took them in. I took 201 first, which is the design one, and then I took 200. 67 questions, 3 case studies, 51 standalone questions, 9 were those single shots. It took me about 2 hours to complete. There wasn't any drag and drop on there. And the topics of my exam were Azure Database, HD Insight, Databricks, Cosmos DB, Azure Data Factory, Azure Data Lake Gen 1 and Gen 2, storage, blobs, files, and cubes. So there's a lot of stuff on that, right? And I felt really good about that one. And then 200 I took a few days later, and 58 questions, 2 case studies, 42 standalone, 6 per single shot, several drag and drop, took me about 2 hours to complete. Similar type of topics, a few other ones stuck in there, but still, a lot of similar topics, but different attack mode of it, right? You're implementing instead of just designing. Any questions on these? Yes, sir.
For the various ones that you're kind of going over, is it the same pass threshold, or is it vary by test?
Yeah, it's they call it 700 cut score. And the other reason I like taking in beta, you don't get your score report right away. But I think what happens is they rescore the exams multiple times in the beta period, because as more and more people take the exams, they figure out, oh, wait a minute, why are people having problems with this question? Why are they always choosing C instead of D? And it's wrong. Well, maybe that's not a good question. So they throw it out. That means if I got it wrong, hey, my score just went up, right? So that's another reason I like taking the beta exams, because I get that benefit. And also, they're about half price, I think. So we take a beta exam, half price. So not too bad. For the AI and data science exams, for AI 100, 62 questions, only one case study, and 9 of the single shot questions. It took me an hour and 45 minutes to complete. A lot of drag and drop. And topic on my exam, IoT, big time on this exam for me. Storage, infrastructure, bots, stream analytics, and so on. And this was kind of threw me off, was the least amount of questions were on cognitive services, which is what I think about AI. It's like, wait a minute. No, it should be asking me about these cognitive services and how I do those sampling sizes and stuff like that. But no, it's like, so that really threw me. And then DP 100, which is the data science exam, 60 questions, 2 case studies, 9 single shot questions. A lot of drag and drop in this one. A lot. And it took me an hour and a half to complete. It's like, oh, wait a minute. You said, this one was hard. Why did it take you only an hour and a half to complete? That's because I didn't know any better to look back at my answers. I was like, I have no idea. If I look at this question again, I'm not going to get a better idea. Right? So I just go with my gut. I go, okay, I'll go with my gut. No, I reviewed every question twice if I could. But as far as as far as being confident about it, this is my lowest confidence one of the ones I took. And I said there's lots of data science stuff in here. Also talking about data science VMs. What the heck is that? So if you can actually in Azure spin up a data science VM that's pre-configured with a bunch of data science stuff already installed on it, so that you can easily get off and running quickly. Does anyone know what smote is? Now mice.
That's what God did when they was angry to the people.
He smoked them. Or mice. No, I'm not talking about the things you use on your desktop. But there's something. So I was like, what the heck is this? And so I was able to guess well enough to pass all these. So
With that being said, did you prep for these tests, or did you go in kind of
I did some light prep work. I looked at the learning paths. Also, I went to the exam website for each one of these exams. I looked at the requirements there. And that's also something else to think about looking at before taking the exam, is on the website for each particular exam, there's a link to a document that has changes to the exam since it was first introduced. So of course these were all in beta, so there was no document like that. That would say, for example, on like 774, the one with data science and machine learning that is going to be discontinued. They took a lot of the machine learning stuff out of that one. So the machine learning stuff was really reduced if you took it today. So it kind of says, oh, we're peeling that off to a different exam. So sometimes they add stuff. So when you're studying, sometimes it pays to say, okay, what type of solution am I looking for? So if you start with a full solution scenario like this, and try, when you're reading the case studies, when you're reading the problem, try to map it to a solution that you've seen when you're studying. Such as this case where we have an event hub, streaming into analytics, which goes to Azure SQL Database and Azure Storage. We use Azure Data Factory to pump it into, to give it to machine learning, which goes back to Azure SQL Database. We have Power BI to display the results, etc. So often when you're studying stuff online, you'll see stuff like this, where you have schematics like this, and it helps you try to frame up what a solution would look like, and it helps you answer the questions that way. But this is really how it looks like on the test, pretty much, and especially in a case study. You have a question, you have a summary, you have a current state, and details maybe on various tabs here. So you have to switch between tabs in order to go find information and then go, what was the question again? Go back to the question. Oh, wait, I'm looking for this. Okay. And so that's the hard part about with case studies, I think, is jumping around these tabs to find information. Be prepared for ambiguity. You're going to say, hey, here's a situation, and it may try to be leading to one thing, and just I'll give you a good example of this. I remember on a couple of times on the data engineering test, the question would start out with, you have an instance of Azure SQL database. Okay, I said, okay. And then, so there's, I know that most people here are not as data-centric as I am, but there's something called Azure SQL Database, which is just a single database offering. And there's something that we just introduced in the fall called a managed instance. So it's Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, which is kind of a group of databases that can interact with each other. Okay? So the Azure Singleton database, you can't interact with other databases, it's just that database there. So when I read that question, it says an instance of Azure SQL database. I go, are they talking about managed instance or not? And then you read more about the question and you go, oh, okay, it's not, it's just Azure SQL database. So, and I don't think they do that on purpose.
Oh,
Yes, they do.
Any way they can trick you.
So, and again, with the single shot questions, that's why I say it'd be, same scenario, but different solutions, doesn't meet the requirements, yes or no. This part here is kind of infuriating.
Because the first answer that you thought was right was not right.
Maybe. It might be right. But you don't know. But you can't go back and change your answer. So that's why it's infuriating for me. So build a study timeline and stick to it. Maybe take the exam first and then find out what you don't know. Build a plan and study. Utilize MSDN benefits. The day before, we're going to talk about these things here. There's lots of retake offers. I've talked about retake offers. There's a current set of offers that are going to expire at the end of June. I'm sure they're going to have a different set of offers with retakes included and practice exams possibly. They'll be offered starting in July. I don't know that for a fact. That's just what I've seen every year over the past 3 years or so. They say, oh, here's a, sign up for this and you get retakes. But unless you when you take the exam, find out what you're not good at, and write down notes. You can't take them with you, but if you write them down, once you leave, you'll remember them better. About what you didn't know.
So you can do that at your desk test?
When you do it at home, I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
I don't think so because.
Well, I don't mean at home, I mean at the testing center.
Yes, so they give you like a laminated sheet of paper with a Sharpie that's usually too big to really write on, but to write with, but they give you a Sharpie that erases easily on the laminated paper that they give you. And when you leave, you give that stuff back to them and they erase it.
But at least it could stay up here better. is
Exactly,
what you're saying.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can't take anything with you away from the exam center except your experience. So, and a score report. You get a score report if it's non-beta. So the score report will say like the 4 or 5 major areas that the test is covering, and what your percentage was on each one of those. Build a plan and stick to it. Utilize learning sites. So Pluralsight, I noticed valid for MSDN subscription holders. I think it may be valid just for generic, for no MSDN subscription holders. The Microsoft Azure Learning series of stuff is free for MSDN subscriptions for about a year. If you have an MSDN subscription, you also can get $150 of Azure usage credit per month. So if you don't know about that, and you have MSDN subscription, you can take advantage of an Azure subscription. And then you get to play with all this stuff. I talked about hands-on labs before. That's another thing you can do to help learn with your study practice. Block off time in your calendar and stick to it. If you want to invest in this, that's what you need to do. Do it now. There it is, the MSDN. MOOC content, like EDX, is another good website to use. Just don't read it, do it. Build muscle memory so that if you do get one of those performance-based test questions, that you can do the work and not just answer questions about it.
What do you mean about development? You utilize DevOps. I mean, that's a different area of study, if I understand it correctly.
So utilize developing a solution and then put it in operation in your test plan. So you're developing your test plan and then operationalizing. Make sense?
I guess.
So you're planning like what you're going to do for your study, and then you develop your solutions, and then you put it into operation using your MSDN subscriptions and so on. Let's see, there's also LinkedIn Learning has some stuff out there too. So, wish they took care of Linda. Linda was
Did they buy Linda?
I think so.
Yeah, 2 years ago, and if you live in Mecklenburg County, you can get Linda free.
Through the library.
If you have a library card.
Linda.
You know how up to date that LinkedIn Learning with Azure?
I believe that the Pluralsight stuff is more current than the LinkedIn Learning stuff, even though Microsoft owns LinkedIn. The day before, get plenty of rest. Don't schedule it late in the day after customer meetings, like someone I know who did it. Because your brain can be fried by then. Eat a reasonable meal. Don't eat something gastronomically challenging. Right? Because you need to study.
More
And
high
if you take a
fat.
48 ounce Coke.
More high fat, you get the itis, you get the full itis.
That's right. Or if you take an exam during beta, your score will not be available at the end of your test. Just be patient, and it's probably a good thing you don't get your score right away. Because like me, I was like, well, I don't think I passed, and I don't know what I did. Resources. So we kind of talked about all these already. Anybody here work for a partner? There's a Yammer group for partners, and they often have study groups for certain certifications on a regular basis. So I wanted to call that out. Microsoft Press has a bunch of free ebooks that you can download as well. But these are some great things to use in preparing for your certification exams. Any questions on that stuff so far? Because we're going to delve out of Microsoft for a minute.
Is there any tracks through like community colleges or anything like that as well that you're aware of?
I don't know if there are tracks at community colleges yet or not. This is so new, role-based stuff, that probably not. Probably the Pluralsight stuff is probably the best.
My experience with Central Piedmont is that they offer these things and then not enough people sign up and they cancel the class.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've been told by a reliable person who's done both is that UNC has something UNC Charlotte has something similar, and it's much less expensive than Central Piedmont, which is not what I would expect. And I don't know if it has to do with this particular thing, but still. Worth
Yes.
mentioning.
MSDN, I feel like I should know what it is, but I don't, and how much it costs.
So that's the Microsoft Developer Network, and usually you get it through your work. So they need to.
Because you can't afford it.
Oh, if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Yeah, it's,
It's really expensive.
of MSDN, I don't know whenever that, they changed all that stuff. Because I always worked for a partner that had MSDN benefits, so, you know, it was like, I need my MSDN subscription. I go, okay, here you go. Great. You know,
There's your license for everything. You have a test license for every product.
yeah, it's really, and that's, you asked me earlier about the college thing, and I don't know if they still have this, but whenever I was teaching, we had the MSDN Academic Alliance Program. Basically, we had the students join the Information Systems Club for like $30 for a year, and then we would burn CDs for them and give them, you know, whatever they wanted. So it was like almost free, $30. So
So I'm a contractor, so does that mean I'm pretty much out of luck for it?
probably.
Yeah.
I will look and see if there are student resources available. Maybe you get an EDU email address or something like that. I don't know. Often that's what they require is say you're a student. I have an EDU email address. So. Any other questions on Microsoft certs so far? Okay. So AWS and GCP. AWS are also role-based, and they have learning paths. They have 10 exams that they have currently available. They're good for 3 years, and it's about $150 an exam. I have not taken any of these, but as you can see, they have foundational, associate, professional, and specialty certifications. So similar to what we saw with Microsoft, with role-based certifications. Actually, in one of I did this session for Richmond SQL Saturday back in March, and one of the people in the sessions had done the cloud practitioner exam for AWS. And they said it was fairly basic, but their test center experience was not pleasant. Just it was in a bad part of town and stuff like that, so. That was just his experience. And recommended experience for the cloud practitioner one is 6 months of just fundamental AWS stuff. So I'm just kind of curious, how many people here have used AWS? Just one person? Okay. Just kind of curious. I've used it in the past too. There are a lot of similarities.
My wife
between-
uses it a lot. She's on Amazon all the time. Just kidding.
Yeah. We leverage the back end.
Yeah, and, well, Amazon is really what started the public cloud, because they had these big data
AWS,
centers.
they say, was an afterthought,
It was.
that they monetized.
Yeah, they were like, we have all this extra compute space, well, why don't we rent it out?
Yeah. Oops, it became money.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's amazing. GCP, Google Cloud Platform certification. They have an associate, professional, and they have something called their G Suite certification, which G Suite is like their office type of stuff. And the one that I've focused on, which I haven't done any testing yet on, is the data engineer one. It's one exam. They have a free online practice exam. There's some online coursework you can take. And I looked at the website for this before, well, just the other day. And it is, again, it's a wide range of topics. All about their data estate on GCP. You won't see anything about SQL Server on there. even though you can run SQL Server on GCP, you can run SQL Server on AWS. You won't see any SQL Server questions on either of those ones because they're, of course, not promoting Microsoft stuff. So you'll see stuff probably about MySQL or PostgreSQL or their variants thereof, such as in Amazon, you'll see questions about Aurora. In GCP, you'll see stuff like Cloud Spanner, Big Data, BigQuery, no, not Big Data, BigQuery. Their data visualization stuff, I can't remember the name of it now. Anyway, but you'll see a wide variety of things there on their exams. So it won't go very deep. You can go wide, and so you have to study a lot. Okay, so we're like at the end here. So certifications have changed quite a bit over the years. I think that they're valuable, at least from my point of view, keeping me on my toes on what I need to learn, what I need to know to help satisfy my customers. Plan to take the exam twice. That's what I did whenever I was going to the exams. I was not planning on passing the exams the first time. I was thinking, just go in, because there wasn't much material out there for me anyway. I was like, just go in and take it, and if I pass, great. If not, I know what I need to study. And I think if you approach it that way, it's going to be a much more pleasant experience than trying to pass it on the first
Lower
time.
your expectations.
Exactly, exactly. Plan your study and stick to it. So with that, thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time.